that would be great. Thank you. I know, of course, the best session. Yes, yes, yeah. Yeah. So just answer the first one, yeah, when I ask you, yeah. Yeah, yeah. The last question will be how international actors can support you. So the main, like, big recommendation. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Bam, yeah. Andra, 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 Andra. We've just lost one speaker. He was here and then he has disappeared. I'm sure he's very tired, yeah. I'm tired and I flew yesterday, so I can't imagine how he feels. Sorry? Yeah. We've got some people here. Yeah, I'm going to make them move closer together. Ah, Juma, okay. Got you. Okay, welcome everyone. This is the last session, usually the toughest session as it's the last in a long day and it's right after lunch, but I think it's going to be really exciting. I'm Leslie Connolly, I work with the International Peace Institute and I've been leading our work over the past few years on peace building and sustaining peace at IPI. And I have 4 incredible practitioners with me who are really working on the ground to implement a lot of what we've been talking about in the first part of the day. And so we want this session to be interactive. I see we have a very full audience, lots of young people, so I'm sure there are a lot of ideas that we want to bring forward too. So I'm going to ask you all to stand up and move forward so that we can come closer together. Especially you guys at the back need to come forward. Great. Good. Perfect. I think that will be better. And so how I'd like to really sort of run this session is that I'll be asking our 4 panelists a few questions about their work, about some of the challenges they've encountered, successes, that will really, I think, touch on what we've been hearing about this morning, about policy frameworks that are trying to promote engagement with young people. We're going to now hear from their mouths how this has helped them, what challenges they have, what work they really do. And then I really want to open it up to the floor here for you all to share what you do to try and promote and engage as young people in your states, with your government, with your local authorities, or implementing these frameworks, and then to just share any questions that you may have. So I'm not going to speak very much. I'm rather going to hand it over immediately to Aitem Brihani, who is on this side, who is joining us from Ethiopia, and he's the director of the Peace and Development Center. And I'm going to ask him first and foremost to just tell us a bit about yourself and about the work that you've been doing.
Thank you very much. My name is Aitan. I am the director of the Peace and Development Center, established 30 years ago to work on peace building, conflict resolution, and conflict prevention. What we are actually working currently is we work in all aspects of the peace building issues in the country, but specifically with the youth, I will be focusing what we are actually doing related to the youth. To tell you something about the context of Ethiopia, we are around 104 million population size, which is 41% of aged under 15, and 28% is aged between 15 up to 29, and you can imagine almost 70% of the total population of this country is below 29. Excluding any youth-related projects with this population size is meaningless. So we reshape our programs to focus on youth, and we developed 4 principles that we will follow in implementation of the youth projects. The first principle is youth are not a homogeneous group. They said that youth, everybody, when they actually talking about youth, they put them in one package, but they are not homogeneous. They have different needs, they have different demands, and like this. So we first acknowledge youth are not homogeneous. The second principle is the notion that youth issues are misleading and is not helpful. Like people come and say, okay, there are youth issues, but these youth issues are misleading. Practically, you should also have space to define their own issues rather than defining the issues to them. That's another principle. So we create a safe space for the youth to define their own issues and to address it properly by themselves. The third principle we follow is youth are the present as well as the future. Most of the time people talk youth are the future, but they are also the present. They can define their own issues, and they can be a change now, not only tomorrow. It's rather they can be also a change in now. The fourth principle we follow in youth programs are youth need an enabling environment that we have to create for them to address their own issues, like in non-politically safe space, creating a safe space for their own dialogue is a very important thing that we do in the youth. Basing these 4 principles, we have 2 programmatic approaches that we follow in order to address these principles. The first one is youth-focused programs by themselves. All complete programs which are actually youth-focused is the one approach that we actually follow. Like we implement programs in school and out of school, which is actually focused on youth only. And we also mainstream youth in all our other projects that we have. That is important for us to do. So basically the programs that we design includes youth or focused on youth in any activity that we incorporate youth on this. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I think that it sounds like really interesting work, and I'm sure we're going to dig a bit more into it. But I think that some of the points you've made about how youth need to define the work themselves, and they need to drive forward the work. And I think we've been seeing all over the world that youth movements are coming together and challenging things when they're dissatisfied and not giving up until there's change. So youth really are acting in the present. And I think one thing I often think about with youth is that we're not waiting for someone else to give us a chance. Like, we are taking the moment to cause some change. So our next speaker who's going to tell us a bit about her work is Noor Barakeh. She is from Syria originally and part of one of the co-founders of SDG 5 Thrive. And so Noor, can you tell us a bit more about what SDG 5 Thrive is really about?
First of all, thank you so much for inviting us to be on this wonderful panel. Thanks, Leslie, for the introduction as well. I've had many experiences in my career. It wasn't one field that I worked on, but for your question, I would like to describe myself as one of the founders of the SDG 5 Thrive. And we are 5 women from different backgrounds. Heather Bokish is one of the founders, and Suad as well. Happy to have you here with me. We work individually. Each of us has her projects and partners, but we work also collectively since we have the same aim and goal that we share the interest to inspire people around the world to act on issues that matter. So we raise voices, especially we come from conflict areas, current conflict areas, so it's really so important to have these voices in such places. In this regards, I've written a theater piece. Maybe you have heard a bit about it in the morning. Thanks, Monica, for mentioning that. It's called Not a Fate, and it's about youth peace building among youth in conflict situations. This piece has been based on real interviews and real characters that I've made in Syria before I came here 1.5 years ago. And this theater piece was performed at the European Forum Alpbach last summer, and also for an audience including the former Austrian President Dr. Heinz Fischer and Dr. Ban Ki-moon. It was my pleasure, and also at one of the events of the Austrian Parliament. One of the, just mentioning very shortly, one of the very effective response I've got after this performance, that people come to me and also to us, the participants back then, they come to us and they said, we've heard a lot about the Syrian issue, we've heard a lot about this conflict, but now we feel like we learned something new. We learned something so deep, although it's a theater piece by the end of the day. So it's not a lecture, it's not an information, it's only talking to their minds and their emotions. Also, I've spoken a lot in different panels on, with the SDG 5 Thrive at the Diplomatic Academy, at the Ban Ki-moon Center, and at KAICID Center for Dialogue. We use a lot of media and different, as we mentioned, we are 5 different approaches. So we use journalism, we use theater, we use dance sometimes, we use public speaking a lot to address young people in making change.
Amazing. I think that it's so interesting how in the field of peace building, it's not just one activity anymore. Dance, theater, music. I think genres of work that we wouldn't have necessarily thought actually bring people together are now becoming a main tool. And then I'm going to hand it over to Soad Mohammed, who is also working with SDG 5. She's from Somalia originally and speaks 6 different languages. So Suad, tell us a bit about your work.
My name is Soad, and I came from Somalia. I work with Red Cross as assistant consultant and diakoni. I work also with the young generation for many projects, and I think the basic thing when we're working with young generation, we have 3 levels, and I believe in these 3 levels. You need to know what this young generation they come from, where they are come from. And the 3 level I noted always is that first, the family and safety, second, the education system, and third, the social function system. How to react with these 3 systems? First, if the family basic is really okay, then the education systems and the functional system will be good for the young generation. But if they have the basic is not there, then they have some corruptions or violence or many things come from it. And I can give you example. I used to work also in many places, and one of them was I used to work in a school, in high school, Austrian school, as a volunteer, as an English teacher. And when I was working there, I saw many cases in the field as a teacher, and one of them was a young girl, because the school was in majority student came from background, refugee and migrant background. And one of the students, she came to me one time, and she's a young teenager, and she's raising her brother. She left it from a war and conflict and came to Austria, and she don't have her parents. They got killed in Afghanistan. And the girl, when she came to me, she told me that she have a problem with her young brother who's 8 years old. And I said, what's the problem there? She said he had in a school a group, and the group, they told him that you want to come with us to be apart from the group, you need to do something. They dare him to do something. And they tell him that to go to the local store and shoplift something. And he really did it. And he don't did it because he was like wanted to do that, but just he wanted to fit in somewhere. And the girl, when we talked to the students, the young boy, he told us that he lost his family, he don't have anyone, and he was searching any place to get in or to get fit in. And that's we started talking with the teachers and sit together to support this young generation, because she's a teenage, alone, raising her brother, and she don't have a family to get killed, and she's alone. How to fix that? And we started to support her to stability, to have more basic and to have implement for peace and everything, and how to have stability life in the system. And the teacher was really, really so supportive. and the family were really taking the support, especially the girl. She don't know how to raise a child. She don't have even her own child. She's a teenage, 17 years old. But I think we need to know the three things, like I said, the family, the education, the system. You need to know the basic, where these people come from, why the young generation doing this thing. Then you know and you can solve the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's exactly it. You really have to understand from the perspective of the organization, the people, the community that we are working with, not just come from the outside with your own assumptions. And so our fourth panelist is Juma Imwani Abdullah. He flew in from Nairobi this morning, and he is a community youth leader. So Juma, do you want to tell us a bit about your work?
Thank you for inviting me. And I'm from Kenya, specifically Nairobi, in a place called Majengo. It's an informal settlement. And when I talk about informal settlement, most people think that it's a place where you have crooks, you have all these problems. So it's a part of many problems. But it's a lively place. We have a lot of different cultures, different people from different countries. And we are very welcoming. So if anyone likes to visit our place, you're very much welcomed. And what I do is I try to be a role model for the youths there. Since my day job is I use a motorbike to ferry people, so we call it boda boda, and it is in form of a taxi. You pay, and that's my day job. And I try as much as I can to be a role model for these youths who I grew up with, and so much that I try to bring them back from doing crime, being radical, and joining all these groups such as the Al-Shabaab and other groups in our area. So I have been trying to change this notion that we have in Kenya that is said in Kiswahili, vijana ni viongozi wa kesho. It means that youth are tomorrow's leaders. I try to show them that we are not tomorrow's leaders, we are today's leaders. Since if what I'm doing is a motorbike business, and I'm trying as much as I can to bring peace in my area. Also that guy who is a school dropout, maybe he used to be in a gang group or doing crime or doing drugs, can also be a leader and bring peace to our area. Thank you.
Amazing. I think all four of our speakers are just doing such incredible work and such different work, but all with young people. And so the question that I really have, and maybe we'll start with you, Juma, if that's okay, to really say, what are some of the successes that you've sort of seen in your work, and what are some of the challenges that you experience?
I'll start with the success. For the success, I've tried so much to bridge the gap between the youths and the police. Since in my place where I come from, it is not easy for a youth to sit in the same place with a policeman. If a policeman gets into a room that is full of youths, you are guaranteed to have chaos in that room. So we have doing dialogues and trying to show them that the police are also human like us, and they are here to provide the security and to keep law and order. And for the challenges is many youths in my area are not employed, and as much as we can try to show them to nurture their skills and try to show them that they can employ themselves, we still lack the government support we need. Since the government is still, from the day we voted in, the government is saying that it is going to create 5,000 jobs, but still to today, I haven't seen even a single job since they were elected. So I'm trying to bring them, to show them that if you employ yourself, you can have the money and you can have the skills, and you won't need to join this group and be a radical or join crime. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that that's, I can relate to that a lot because where I'm from in South Africa, we have the same issue with the police. And that there's, and I know in the place where I live now in the US, we have a huge problem with the police. And so it's very difficult when your law enforcement authorities are not trusted by the people. And so, Noor, Suat, well, first let me ask Suat, let's go in this order. What type of challenges do you have in your work, and how do you sort of see the successes? And do they connect at all to some of the ones that Juma has raised?
From Juma, it's a little bit different for me. I can relate to my work in Red Cross. There's a project there's a program, and we call it Project Exchange, and we go as a volunteer, as an ambassador, we have background from migrant and refugee, to schools, to the companies, to the agencies, just to tell the other pictures, because I think the local community of Austria and the newcomers, they don't have this good relationship because they don't know each other. Majority, they get the view from the news of the political, and then no one knows each other. And we try always to reach them and to talk about migration, refugee, and when they have questions, they can ask us. And because they never meet a refugee or they never meet a migrant, they want to know more information on that. I remember in the project in church, there's a two story I have it. One story first was we went to agency, hiring people, and this agency, we talk with the staff, because majority they get in CVs from immigrant background people or refugee to see the CV if this person can qualify for working. And majority of them, they never met a refugee and they never met a migrant, and they don't know what things they face in this life. And I started talking to them in this workshop, and really, when we finished the workshop, I talked to the boss, and she came to us, she said, thank you, and I said, why? And she asked me one thing, she said, you know, you changed something, and I said, what I changed? She said, first, all of them, they sit 1 hour, they never moved. That's something amazing, because always when they come to workshops, they moved, some of them, they say, we go to toilet, we have some work, and they never stay, and the good thing, you make them stay. Second thing, she said, the next time when they see the CV of the people who they want to hire, if they see the background is a migrant or the refugee, they will look back and say, oh, these people, they have to want to fit in, they're educated, they're high qualified. We need to look back at these people and to make them to work. And next time they will sit on the CV, not 2 minutes, she said, because used to before they see the CV, a refugee or a migrant, they throw it off, they're not qualified. But now they will see that, oh, they're qualified. There are people who come to the country. I know many people amazing who in 6 months learn the language, to see eins, to see one. There's people who talent, who working hard every day to reach something. And when you go to some agency company and only they see the CV like this and throw away, that means you don't do anything good. But when you try to change the staff member and tell them, oh, yeah, I did something, that these people, they look at 10 minutes and say, okay, where they come from, what they had education, and that changed it. And really, that was amazing, that I felt it good, that I changed something. Maybe in future, some people who apply for this agency, they can hire faster. The second story I wanted also to share, we sometimes we go to schools on banks and some places to talk to also the young generation. The young generation, the majority of them, they don't have that view about migration, what it means to be refugee, where you come from, the conflict. They never saw it. Some of them, they lived the peace life for a long time, but they don't know what it means to have a food on the table. You have education in the system. Some people, they don't have it. For what we did, we go to the bank. There's one student, he came from Afghanistan, and really he worked hard. His family was in Syria. He came at a young age in Austria. He tried to work hard himself that he get in the position in bank and to work there as an internee. I was amazing and amazed from him because he finished the high school and everything alone. He don't have anyone to support. He don't have a family to tell them, go study, go to school, go there, but he did himself alone. And when we went there, we wanted to the employees to understand this boy, where he come from, and to tell them, okay, you need to respect because sometimes he don't talk to them, and they don't have interest to ask him where he come from. And I start talking to them in the same session. I remember that day, the first time when I stand in front of them, they said, where she come from? Everyone was like, Africa. We don't know which way Africa. They said, okay, she have education? They said, no, maybe she have 4 children, a husband, she's with hijab, she don't study at all. That would be the view they have it for the media. But later when I speak with them, the thing I have it, they was like shocked. Then I tell him to speak. Then he cried, and he started telling them his story. And he's alone, and he's wanted to fight, and every day he wake up with his family to send them money and to go to the work. And that time they realized that, oh, we don't ask this guy, we don't know him, we were with him 1 year, you know? And then they hug him, and we hug each other, and everyone started crying. And really was amazing that we could change something. And really when we left the guests, they told me that one of them, oh, I have a goosebump, thank you so much, you changed something. These things we do in our work is like a simple thing you can do, a presentation presentation, a workshop to talk to other people, but you change a lot of things of these people that they don't know anything. They're not because ignorant, no, they don't know anything. They need education. Like, let's come back to the system. I said the level. Education is the main thing to factor of the system, social system.
Yeah, totally. And you know what's so interesting is that you're doing this work in Vienna, in Austria. Yeah. And there's this perception that in the global north, everything is perfect, and in the global south, that's where all the problems are. But actually, you need to do peace building work all over the world. Yeah. And especially in countries in the global north, they also need to show how things are changing.
And I want to add one thing in the challenges. We have, the biggest challenge we have in organization, I'm working with them, expectation. The people have very high expectation that we can do everything. We cannot do everything because there's a system, there's a law. A second thing, we don't have a resource sometimes. Or sometimes we don't have the money or the funding from the government. Sometimes the government, there's many organizations, they cut out the money to help them. And that's also a big challenge for us. And when person come to your place and ask you that, why you don't help me, why you don't do this, and get angry, we don't know how to do it, but we can't tell you the truth, we cannot lie, and really we feel bad because we try our best to help them. And sometimes the high expectation, the lack of resource, and we have no funding, this is a big, big challenge for us in the, and I can understand that because I came from Somalia. I'm a pharmacist. On my personal level, also, I have a challenge in my life in my own country. When I went there as a licensed pharmacologist, I wanted to work there to do something for my community, especially for the medicine. We have the safe medicine. We don't get a good quality medicine to treat small types of disease like malaria, tuberculosis. We get medicine from China, from India, with expired, and sometimes the people get more diseases than the disease they have it. And we started as a group a dream that we need to change the system, we need to help, but we could not help because we have a corruption, we have lack of education, we have the system is not well that can give you resource and funding, and that really make us really stressed. But this dream I want to continue until now to one day to fulfill it, to help my own people in Africa that's safe medicine and they can get more quality in medicine.
Totally, a basic human right to have access to proper health care. And so I'm going to turn to this side. I'm going to start with you, Item, and I really will be interested to hear about some of the successes you've had in your work and some of the challenges, and if it connects at all to what Jumo Suad have brought up.
Thank you very much. One of the successes that I consider in our programming is the System Dialogue project that we run since 2009. For the last 10 years, we have been running a project called System Dialogue Campus Network, which is creating a safe space for the youth to sit down and address the dividing issues they have in Ethiopian public universities. If you know about the politics of Ethiopia, the main violence issues usually reside in the universities. When students start protesting, the country starts burning. So what we design is, let's start a System Dialogue project in these 5 universities, which are very much violent, conflict-prone, and let's see how the change can be brought to this country. And every year we engage 600 students to be a part of the System Dialogue project, to sit down for 2 hours in every 2 weeks and discuss dialogue on the divisive issues that are leading to conflicts. And still, in these 5 universities, 600 each, 3,000 students every year graduated from the System Dialogue project. For the last 10 years, around 30,000 youths passed through the System Dialogue project. This is one of the successes we have. These youths are now leaders in a very important government and non-governmental offices, which have the culture of dialogue and accommodate differences. That's the main success that we consider. We also have a success that we started a youth-led projects. Like our projects are led by the youth themselves. We just give them a technical guidance so that they can do what they want. That is really creates at least a belief that youth can deliver, can lead projects like us. The other, creating a safe space in a very politically unsafe environment in Ethiopia is very important success for us. Like, you cannot even sit down 4 or 5 people together to dialogue in Ethiopia, like before the current reform, if you are aware on the current reform. But in that even strict political situation, we created a safe space for youth to sit down and dialogue on political matters, on social matters. And that's the very important successes we have. Regarding the challenges, we the political environment that we are operating is a big challenge. The finance is a big challenge. The social media, which is like propagating hate speech and false information throughout the whole use, is also another big challenge we are facing currently in implementation of our use-led projects.
I think that this notion of a safe space, especially in a closed political environment, is a huge issue, and one that I think is only growing with the shrinking space for civil society to act, for youth to engage. And I think that all of this connects to one of your main principles about the enabling environment for projects to thrive, for people to thrive, to see an alternative to going into crime or violent extremism or drugs or different routes. Noor, do you want to sort of round us off by telling us about some of your successes and challenges in your work?
I was happy to listen to all of the panelists before, because there's a lot in common, and that's also always one of the main things we are trying to highlight. That's the common between all of the problems we had in all over the world. It's somehow related too much to each other. Working under a very closed political atmosphere is one of the main big problems we have had in Syria. Back then, when I was working with a group of young people, we considered ourselves as activists. We were for sure working around all the time. You can't work in political related issues without putting yourself under danger. And we also, this very sensitive, one of the challenges actually were about when we were in Damascus and receiving a lot of internal refugees from all other cities, and they also come. We are talking about a very sensitive situation. It is considered as a civil war, but it's exactly the differences between communities. So one of the main things were to hosting these families coming from opposition areas, we could say, to regions where they are under still the regime authority. So working with them was so difficult. These people, first of all, we were talking shortly, it's the main idea is to break the wall with them and to build the trust. Otherwise, they will not be responsive in any way to anything you try to implement with them. So it was a bit, especially with young people, because most of them were women. We can't say fortunately, but that make a lot of progress in the woman situation, coming from very conservative backgrounds, and the new demographic changes. So they actually forced to work and to learn and to stand for their own. So it was one of, we can't say the positive sides, but it's the truth. And coming back to these workshops, we started with working emotional approaches, just to entertain these people, to make them comfort and welcome and in the new environment. But then we realized that there's a lot of potential there, and we could open up to critical thinking, to new topics, still so cautious, not going to talk about religions or other stuff, but for example, organized some workshops about the role in media in the middle of everything was happening and the manipulating of several sides. So it was always interesting to see how different points of views come together and they feel somehow safe to express themselves. So this approach, I think, was one of the successful approaches that we made. And also very important to mention, working there, it's so difficult and so different from working here. Here, it's the challenges are much different. So I mentioned already a lot of them. But in my point of view, success in this definition for me, it's about changing, to be able to changing behavior. And in order to change behavior, we need to make a shift in our value system somehow. And such in conflict situations, to do that, we need to speak the language of people. So in our work, one example come to my mind, we perform Microspectives. It's a performance and an interactive dance theater, actually, and interactive game with IASA in Luxembourg. it was a combining between art and science, but also include the audience in order to involve them to take initiative and to think and to feel like they are part of this problem, especially when talking about critical topics such as migration. So the approach of working here and then it's so difficult, it's so different, and the challenges are different as well, and also evaluating your success is different. But I wanted also to add something very important is to actually address the base, the foundation of the conflict when we talk about conflict. Because, for example, and this is a bit controversial, the role of the human organization in Syria, for example, nowadays, they have plenty of programs in several fields. And they, for sure, implementing the society and helping the society, it's really exposed people to new ideas and to new ways. It's very important. But on the other hand, since the economic situation is very difficult, so people really don't have jobs. People, especially young people, they have no other choice. They turn to do whatever it takes from them to be close to the organization, to take all the opportunities to participate, not really in real, which is totally understandable. So it became kind of a way for them to avoid being in employment. Yeah. So it's again, if we have programs that address peace building without addressing poverty and the chances for young people to work, then it will not work. Certainly. So they have to be implemented somehow on the same time.
Totally, and I mean, that's the basis. We keep hearing no peace without development, no development without peace. These are interconnected. And I think it's so interesting that all four of you work in different contexts with different targets, but have similar challenges, expectations, finances, creating a safe space, working with the government. So, and it's similar challenges that I imagine we would hear quite a lot from the audience. And so now I have one more question for our panel, but I'm going to save it to the end. And I really want to open it up. I know I have a lot of questions for our four practitioners up here. So I want to open up to see if there are any questions, but also any feedback on the work that you do or the challenges you've seen or some of the successes that you've seen in your work. Margaret.
So many questions. First of all, very incredibly inspiring and powerful, and thank you. I'll just go down the questions, go down the line, and I'll try to make them fast and somewhat brief. Juma, for you, two things. You mentioned that jobs are an issue, and that the informal economy is where a lot of young people look for employment, for income. In your context, have you seen any local authorities or local champions that are willing to work with young people and youth leaders on this issue of employment and employment through an informal economy as a means of addressing some of these grievances? Similarly, in terms of working with the police, what's your best strategy at a local level in making relations better? Do you identify champions within kind of local police force? Do you identify champions within local youth networks? Like, how do you make it better? Or how do you try to make it better? For Suad, your story about, well, both of your stories were so compelling, and they basically got to this notion of humanizing people. We forget that people are people. And so if you could devise a campaign, a communication strategy, either for Vienna or for anywhere else, whereby you can get this message out in a way that's sustainable, that everybody, that you think people would be able to relate to, what would that look like? You brought up language and trust, but you also brought up the importance of finding the smaller projects to then play for a long-term, a bigger term political gain. How do you map that out? And then, sorry, last question, rapid fire. And then for you, I tend, do you have an alumni association for all of these students that graduate, thousands of, so that they can stay in touch, they work together, they work cooperatively, they learn from each other? Does that matter to you, or not so much?
Wow. Any other questions? Any other thoughts? Yeah, please.
Hello, my name is Abdullah, and I come from Syria, and I work with the Syrian Youth Assembly, capacity building, peace building. We work closely with the UN office in Geneva. Anyway, my question is to Suad and Noor, and it's related to politics, actually. With the recent rise of far-right sentiment and populism, nationalism in Europe, and how do you find your work in this atmosphere? How is it feasible to really bridge the gap between local community and the newcomers? Do you think it's getting more difficult? What challenges do you find? How do you face it?
Tough one as well. Anyone else want to jump in with any thoughts? Yeah.
Thank you so much for all of your insights. My name is Daniela Scheibelhofer, Minister of Defense. I just am wondering, how do you motivate yourself to continue to do your work that you're doing every day, and maybe also as some kind of insight for other young leaders, other young people who want to become leaders? What is your advice or maybe your input? How do you yourself get up every day and say, even though you might face some setbacks, as you all said that there are some challenges that you face, how do you keep going? Thank you.
I think that we have a good set of questions on the table that are covering a range of things, but we also have time so we can come back for more afterwards. But just to my four panelists up here, feel free to answer the ones that you can and that you feel comfortable to, and we can just start. Who would like to start in responding? Juma, yeah.
I'll answer the question that Margaret posed for me. As for the champions in police, we try and look for police who is willing and is ready to work with us, since there are those who are still, we have police reforms in Kenya, but still there are those police who are not willing to go through the reforms. They are still bringing us back to those days where a police is the judge, is the executioner, and is the jury. You cannot do anything. As for the local community, we try and identify youth who are reformed, like from a criminal gang, or who was radicalized and maybe he went to fight and then come back. We call them the returnees. We try as much as we can to integrate them and try and work with them. And we do SD the way Aitan said. It started in Ethiopia, and in Ethiopia they're doing it different as from in Kenya. In Kenya we're doing it with the local community down to the grassroots level, whereby the youth who is not employed, he's not in school, is at home doing nothing. We engage him and try to tackle the issues on our own, not waiting for the government to give us the solutions. So we try as much as Aitan said that it is hard to bring a youth to dialogue. So we try as much as we can to bring as many youth as we can to the police dialogues. We engage the police and the youth, and then we come back to the youth and the youth alone with the reformed youth. Thank you. As can I say?
Sure, yeah.
What motivates me is my family. I'm young, but I have a family of my own. I have a son, and I try as much as I can to make Nairobi a better place for him to grow up in. I don't give up, since I know one day he's going to be the same age I am today. And if I fail him today, who is going to make it better for him tomorrow? Thank you.
Yeah, that's incredible. like to go next?
I could answer. I would like to answer that question since working in populism and this new rising right wing in Europe, and especially because this is exactly also the countries hosted refugees and the whole migration topic to be mentioned here and there and to make a big problem out of it. And we are living here, and we have this experience as not only people who work in the field, but also in our daily life. Maybe Saad could also support me here with for sure there's places where you really suffer from racism, sometimes, to be honest. For sure, there's also, if not racism against, if you don't look like a refugee, because there's also, unfortunately, this label, how refugees look like, which is really humiliating, I could say. So then there's another level where it's, once you give your passport, exactly what happened with our friend. She's a brilliant woman. She traveled to the UK to speak in the parliament. She was invited from the parliament. And at the airport, she had a very bad treatment because of her passport as a refugee. So, I mean, this for sure, this is a very challenging atmosphere to work within, and this is what actually could also be the push for us and motivate us to change the image, because as also Saad this said, it's about informing people. People doesn't know a lot. I mean, we are not talking about people born with racism. So it's a mindset that we could address, as the populists address it as well. So working on the fears, on the other hand, we could fill this gap with positive ideas, with representing people as they are. People who came to Austria, for example, they are different segments of society. We can't tell that all of them are angels or evils, right? I mean, it's society as in any country. So it's important to just bring to the table the positive image. And yeah, it's still challenging, but this is why actually we wake up every day. And this is what motivates us, because it's not only our issue, it's an issue for a lot of people who maybe we are representing.
Yeah. 100%. Suad, yeah?
At first, the question you asked me about how we can communicate and break this barrier we have in the system. And I think it starts with us, with you, with everyone here on the audience. How is that? If you are working with international organization, I'm working with international organizations. Some of them, they work in local organizations. And we have many challenges and obstacles. And to break down, we need to step up and to have the platform, be everyone to talk and to educate other people and to tell them what's going on in this world. Then that time when we break, like, because we have a mission, all of us, that to, I think organization was international, was international. Both of them, they have a work that to break down this barrier and to build the bridges. And the second thing in us, we also started when you go to the UPANs or go to places and you see people treating other person bad way. Then you need to step in and say, no, excuse me, we are not doing like that. You need to respect other person. Then, because many situations, like she said, in UPANs, I face it sometimes very, very, very racist because I'm black or I'm Muslim or something, and I get so much insulted, but sometimes I ignore it. You know why? Because I know this person is ignorant. He don't know me. And I have one story always I tell in my presentation. There's an old lady in my area in the train. Every time when I come to train, we meet each other, Shahiza, she starts insulting me. But I try to ignore her. I say, thank you. Because, you know, I feel that she don't know me. She's just reading the news, the media, and she don't know anything about me. And later, first time, second time, the third time she came to me and she was speaking little English and she told me, why are you saying thank you? And she was like angry when I'm saying thank you. I said, you don't know me. And really, we become a friend. And that's really, you change the view of the people, because the people they have in this bubble, that politic media, they're changing the propaganda for everyone and trying to affect of everyone. Even the organization, sometimes they tell you this organization is bad, they're doing something for refugee or for migrant. But I think without the community of the country and the population of the country, we cannot do that. You said about nationalism. I think until now, I see one thing in the picture. I never look to the negative side of of politics and things. I just look to the amazing people of Austria. Really, there's amazing people. Today I'm sitting here, they support me behind me, respect me, give me the really like a platform, ideas, support me from everything. For why I want to embrace a negative person who's talking one person to give them a propaganda to become famous. I can make famous the people who's good in this situation. Who's motivates me? The good people, really. The good people in this world. I think until we have one person good in this world, we survive all of us. Because our grandmother always says, the good one always wins, and the good wins. And that's what I believe. Thank you.
Item.
Thank you very much for your question of the Alumni Association. We have like 30,000 graduates of the Sustained Dialogue project. We cannot leave that workforce like this without using it, because they pass through a very technical trainings like the dialogue skills, dialogue facilitation skills and others, which is very important. So the government itself needs this group to work and deploy them in divided societies to initiate a dialogue. Like we call it a peace incubation process. Like those students who pass through the SD process can come with a peace idea, which is an incubation, to actually plant it in somewhere else, which is seriously divided communities, and start a dialogue, and we support them. We have an alumni association which is actually working in all over the countries. Regarding your questions of the motivation, we always stand early in the morning with the conflict narrative in our surroundings. Like people create narratives that divided people to go to fight and war. If we cannot work on the counter narrative and create our narration that we are one, we can live together in peaceful environments, we cannot survive. So it's not a matter of motivation, it's a matter of survival to counter narrate the conflict narratives that people are creating in social medias, in the hate speech and the false informations. So that counter narrative is our job, we know, and every time we stand up, we work on that. Thank you.
Another round. Any questions or any thoughts that anyone wants to share? Yes, please.
Amazing, and thank you so much. You were really, really wonderful. I have a question for those who lead organizations or somehow are involved, in that, understanding what Suad said, that the resources are being cut, funding is being cut, and especially also right here in Vienna, given some political changes, a lot of programs are being cut. My question is to those who actually lead organizations, understanding the need that's out there, what ideas do you have on an extremely concrete level for increasing not only the platform such as this, but indeed the level of resources, i.e. finance, such as what Suad was talking about, in order to actually get the medication? So my question is, what level of responsibility comes from this side of the room? Thank you.
Totally. There was another hand. Well, I guess I have a question, which is really how you really got involved, how you started within the work that you're doing.
My mom, she fled from Somalia and she left it to Saudi Arabia. We lived it always my life. I was traveling from country to country. And now they're staying in Syria in the war. And she saw 2 wars. And me, I was lucky I saw only 1 war. And the thing is that the family is the role model that always keep you going, that to see. And something also make me going every day is the people who came from background, migrant or refugee, who come in from difficult situation. I can understand it. When I started working, I was started as a volunteer. I was volunteer with many organizations. Before I started, I remember when I came to Austria, they told me, no, you cannot work. You have the green card. You need to go back to Italy or something like that. And I worked to every organization, tell them, I need to work. I need to volunteer. And I remember they give rejection. And I can't understand young generation. They tell me, no, you have Dublin. We cannot take you, blah, blah, blah. But I said, I have 5 languages. Still, I don't learn those that time. And they said, no, we cannot take you, we don't. And I remember the first organization who took me was Red Cross. And after that, they see my work hard and they give me the job. The thing I'm saying that the life of some people who come in from different backgrounds, it's very difficult. They want to fit in some community. They come from war, from conflict. Their family stuck somewhere. I'm 100% sure the majority who's here who have migration background or refugee background, they're thinking of their family stuck somewhere, and they're thinking how to give them money, how to support them, how to live for them. And that makes you every day to wake up to say, oh, I'm blessed, I live, and I can help the world to be a better place. And everyone say, no, we have this world negative, we have political blah, blah. But really, there's a positive side in our world. We are still good. We can change. Why we stuck saying the world, the political leader needs to change? We need to change. We are the start one. We can make it a better place. And there's one point I want to add is that the international organization, the local organization, the young generation, they want all to work together. Some of them, they have a vision, they have problems, they have obstacles. I think we can overcome it by together working. Young generation, I know you have really going to apply for many international relations, saying, oh, I need a job. They not give you, they have obstacles, they make it some difficult things. But don't give up, keep going. I know one of my friends, she's a nurse, and she studied hard, and she applied in Austrian hospitals 7 to 8 times. And really the 8th time she get a good job, get paid, and she never give up. I think the young generation, they need to not give up. The local and international NGOs or other NGOs, please help the other people. Try to open the doors for them. I know that today we have the vision. Like Nelson Mandela, he said, action without vision is passing time, and vision without action is like a daydream. But when we do action with vision, we can change the world for a better place. But I think we have the vision, but just we need the action. Just let's move together. I know we have many things to overcome it, but we can overcome it. And still I have the hope for a better place and better life. But I think we need to have this positive side, because if you don't have this positive side inside you, and I know each of us we have it, then we'll never continue this life become good. But you need to don't look to the world what's going on and say, okay, maybe let's see the positive thing in the morning. Sometimes when I get insulted, I see the day one lady smiled to me, and I was like, okay, this positive day, But you need to see the good side. Don't look to the negative, because there's a many negative in our life, and there's a people really, really struggling for food, for eating, for surviving. I can relate also Al-Shabaab. We have in Somalia also the same thing, Al-Shabaab. Many people joined there, and they killed their family. Some of them, they did many things bad, and everyone is really losing something. But I think it starts with us to believe and to keep going every time. Thank you.
Sure. What an inspiring panel that we have here. So, Item Noir, do you want to come in?
Okay, thank you. How do we start this project that even Juma participated and changed his life? Is very fascinating. 10 years ago, there was a big violence happening in Addis Ababa University in Ethiopia's capital city. As you may know, Ethiopia's its political structure is based on ethnic federalism. Like ethnic groups have their own regions, and the political structure goes like this. And when these students, the young students, came from their home for the first time to the universities, probably it's their first time to meet another person from another ethnic group. So it's like a shocking moment for them. They usually hide on their own ethnic groups and ethnic identities. So they fight each other usually. The fight is not that easy. The violence is very huge. And the violence started in that university goes all over the country because the parents of those students lived in different places in the country. So there was a big violence happening in that university, ethnic violences, and some of the young leaders of the university, the law school students, came to our office and asked that, look, this is happening in the university. You are a peace-building organization, so you need to do something. And the Life and Peace Institute, the LPI, if you know, our long-time partner, we talked to them. And they said, let's see kind of project which can address such kinds of issues in Ethiopia. And we start, Googling simply. And we have found that Sustained Dialogue Campus Network project, which is implemented in the US in different universities it's based on the race relationships, like the black and white, the Latinos, and like this. So we can adapt it to the Ethiopian context to make it to ethnic kinds of dialogue. So we started like that. We recruit people from different ethnic groups, and we train moderators to sit down and moderate. We created groups, like in one dialogue session, only 12 people, 2 moderators, 10 students from different ethnic groups to sit down and dialogue on the divisive issues that's really promoting conflict in the university settings. So we, like 150 students, started like this, dividing it into 50 groups and trained moderators, facilitating them. It was a very, very successful project. Then we took it to other universities outside of Addis. And we took it to Kenya. And it's me who gave the first training to Kenyan moderators to moderate such kinds of dialogues that Juma is participating. We take it to Sudan. Sudan is also implementing in 2-3 universities the same project. They have their own issue of ethnic issues. So that's how it has started, and I'm happy that it's changing the lives of a lot of people, and Juma is a witness here.
Incredible. And like you said, 30,000
Yes.
alumni. That's, I mean, that's really a tremendous achievement, I think. And so interesting that you're able to adapt a program and now replicate it in both Ethiopia and in Kenya. So that's really amazing. Noah, do you want to share your experience?
Yes, I really would like to say that sharing stories is one of the main methods that we are trying to do through our work, because exactly, maybe you mentioned before that we need to remember that people are not numbers who killed in the Mediterranean or whatever, whenever. So we need really to remember that stories has a powerful, magical way actually to affect in people. So I remember from how I started as in Syria, when you are any young people who lived there because of war, for sure, everyone who could went to volunteer work. But how we then scale it up, because I remember 2 stories that they made really very powerful points in my work back then. One of them, when a little girl, 6 years old, came, and from the very beginning of the crisis, and she came to this camp, and we were working with them and everything. And it was like just doing this to her and saying that, don't worry, you will go back. And she was really, she just looked in my eyes and said, stop lying to me. I will never go back. And she's 6 years old. I thought, like, this generation is our future. And if they have all these heavy experiences, so how actually should we help them? I mean, even if we all under the same circumstances. On the other hand, after 3 years, while I started to actually write this theater piece, I was doing these interviews. One of the young people who was involving in military, and he was fighting, and he had killed people. He said to me, I don't want this war to have an end, because I don't remember the shape of my life and the shape of my dreams before war. If they took war from me, I have nothing else to do. So these really dramatic, deep, heavy feelings have drove me all the time to actually do something about it, as long as we can do something about it.
Amazing. I mean, I think the experiences that the 4 of you have had are so inspiring and can be inspiring to many others. And so I think connecting to your question on what other organizations can do, at IPI we have a platform, and we have a large platform on an international scale, and I think it would be great if after the session you could meet with my colleague Mila at the back and record a video of your experience and of your inspiration and what peace means to you in your context, because we've really been trying to gather these stories to show that there's not just one interpretation of peace, there's not just one reason that someone gets involved in peace building, and there's not just one definition of peace building. It's lots of different activities. So if you're willing, she would record a video of you, and if you give us permission to, we'd really like to put it up on our website to really share your message further. And so I think that this brings me to the last question that I'd asked my panelists to prepare for, which is what we sort of wanted to call like the hard hitter. So you have people from Ministry of Defense here, Foreign Affairs, from international organizations, from the UN, OECD, European Commission. What is the one recommendation? What is the one sort of way that these actors could help your work? What would be the one, since you have the platform, what do you want to say to them? What do you want to, just request or demand or ask them to consider?
For me, is most of the organizations that come to Majengo, they come with concepts, or we call them the boardroom decisions. Since they have already decided what they are going to do in Majengo, they don't know what we go through. they don't know what we need, but they're coming and telling us, you need tea when it's time for lunch.
Yeah.
How can I take the tea?
Yeah.
So it's a big problem since most of the organization come and try to implement what they have decided, and most of the time it does not work. And they make those who are like LPI, when they come back or try to implement something, it will be difficult for them to implement the project or try to help us to change our lives. But if they come, we sit down, we listen to each other, and work out a proper solution for us, not the boardroom decision they come with. Thank you.
Yeah. I like that, the boardroom decision. You listen on equal playing fields. And one, I don't know who said this first, but it's one of these quotes that comes up a lot when talking about youth and young people. Is don't invite young people to your table. They have their own table. Ask if you can join their table and have a conversation. So I think that's really an important message.
My message also, there's two messages. First, for the young generation, I wish that the international organization to help them, to give them platform, to look their ideas, because really they have amazing ideas. I think the old people always say, oh, the young people, they don't have this talent, they don't have experience. You don't know, they have more talent and more experience. You never face it in this life. And I think we need the platform, giving time, funding. For me as a personnel, we doing the SGH 5, me and Rani, me and Noor and others. And I think we have like to travel a lot to give our experience, to do panelists, to have support for everything. We need to help other organizations to give the piece and support them with ideas and to make it the platform, everyone open for it. But I think we need a lot of things for support. And I think without support, we cannot do many things in our organizations. But I think that's what I think so.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
For me, I do believe in education as a very long-term process that empower people. As we said a lot about the elite and the young people who are most of the time involved in the same bubbles, and it tend to be actually bubbles here and there, and they are elites. These people got these chances because of this and that. So I do believe in order also to empower young people in whatever issues, peace building or whatever issues, we need first of all again to give them at least the equal opportunities to be on the level as the others, and could really have a good debate between the sides, and that we could have good results. So for me, for example, I studied pharmacy, I studied dance, but here I'm really thrilled that I was accepted in Webster University to study international relations. That one example how I could solidify my knowledge because if I will be representative of other people, all of us need to be to that level where we actually could handle this responsibility. So that's my wish, actually, how the organizing could be in support.
Great. Yeah.
In our case, we believe that we're actually doing an excellent job regarding engaging youth in conflict prevention, but we still can have gaps. Like if we can see similar organizations, how they are actually doing their work, we can improve our engagements also. So exposure visits probably is very important for us to see how, in the morning there was someone talking their European integration, the youth integration, and they have a lot of resources, documents like that. If you can share those documents to us, we can also adapt it to our contexts. Plus, we can see how you are actually doing things. It will be helpful for us, in addition to probably the finance support that we may require to expand our work to all over the country. Thank you.
I think that's a great sort of lesson or just point that you've shared to end on, is that there is a lot of knowledge and resources out there, a lot of studies, a lot of, I think, just lessons learned, best practices, that it just gets lost somewhere in the sort of online vortex. So it would be great to be able to share that, share with each other, those who are here today to share resources. So I think that that is a really great point to end on, and to just help us build up our network and continue this excellent work. So I'd really like to ask all of you to join me in giving our 4 speakers here a round of applause. And thank you all for joining us here today. And I now know we're going into the sort of closing remarks, but I'd encourage you, if you have any other questions for our panelists, to just find them afterwards, to engage with them. We have a recording of this session, which we'll be happy to share with all of you and put online. And I'd ask you to consider doing the videos with Mila. But thank you all so much for what you shared. Really personal stories and really inspiring stories with all of us.
Thank you so much, Lizzie. Thank you.